A blowout to start the doubleheader on Sunday of NBA playoff action in Indianapolis. The Pacers have made this a series as well. We are tied at 2 games all after a 32-point victory yesterday for Indiana at home inside the Gainbridge Fieldhouse. We knew the New York Knicks would head to Indianapolis shorthanded, and it reared its ugly head in game number 4. The Pacers win 121-89 to tie this series at 2 games apiece. That 32-point victory margin easily covers a 5.5-point spread in favor of Indiana. DRS, it's a series once again between New York and Indiana.
It is, and also, we've been watching the New York Knicks and sort of wondering, how can they continually get this done here? Brunson does whatever he wants. Now he's injured. You lose OG Anunoby. It seemingly not matters. And then you take a look at games 3 and 4, which the Knicks actually played very close in game number 3, but game number 4, a completely different story. Look at the plus-minus of the starting lineup for the New York Knicks here. DiVincenzo, minus 40. Hart, minus 29. Brunson, minus 27. Hartenstein, minus 28. Achua, minus 22. They got damaged right off the bat, getting down 34-14, and it was a laugher the rest of the way. And the one thing you could say might be a silver lining here for those New York Knicks is they didn't have to play 48 minutes apiece. You could sort of rest some of those guys late in the game and say it just wasn't our night. But it's apparent right now, OG Anunoby going down with that injury is a massive problem for the Knicks. You're not getting that secondary scoring and also that competitive defense. So this is going to be an interesting one to see moving forward. I still think the Knicks are in a decent position, but that's just based on if I'm going to get Brunson for 42 minutes and 42 points out of those 42 minutes. It's a big-time home court advantage in the Garden, but boy, oh boy, they lost a lot of momentum going to Indianapolis.
It's a great point, DRS, if you're looking for a small silver lining for New York, because they were getting so heavily blown out and pretty much from the jump. Tom Thibodeau went against probably his philosophy and sat Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart for a good majority of that game. The game's leading minute player for New York was Miles McBride. That's Deuce off the bench with 32 minutes. Tate, Dante DiVincenzo, also 32 minutes, but DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson have all pretty much at bare minimum played more than 40 minutes throughout this series, throughout the entirety of the playoffs. Jalen Brunson has not scored 40 in either of the 2 games in Indiana. Yesterday, only 18 points. When we look at what's happened this weekend in Indianapolis, DRS, without OG Anunoby in game number 3, the Pacers were actually a heavier favorite, 7-point favorite at home against New York. To not cover that number in a game that was much more competitive down to the final minute than maybe anybody really expected without OG Anunoby, the New York Knicks did cover, losing by 5, 111-106. Both games inside Madison Square Garden sail over a total. Yesterday's total of 219 and a hook stays under. 222 was the closing total for game number 3. It also stays under. So we head back to Madison Square Garden, but Dr. Donnie has been in front of this situation all along. Hamstring injuries do not just mend themselves with a couple of days off. You need some substantial time away from the floor. I don't know if we'll see OG Anunoby in game number 5 or the rest of this series. How do you feel about this second round set, even heading back to the Mecca?
It doesn't feel good here if you're a Knicks fan at this point because of what you just saw in game number 4. Eventually, the bottom is going to fall out. You can't play great every night. That doesn't mean everybody's going to have a disaster game all at once, and maybe that's a good thing here. 2 points out of Hart, 7 points out of DiVincenzo, and forget about Brunson. Only, as I say in quotation marks, scoring 18 in this one. You're going to have to change the tide, and that crowd's going to have to be a big advantage. But also, when you're dealing with hamstring injuries, I don't expect to see OG Anunoby back either for this game in the Garden as well. Maybe if the Knicks lose, you would see him like, you know what?
Yeah.
If I injure it again, I just hope it's not that bad. I got the whole summer to heal. Maybe I'll give it a go at this point. But if we're being honest with ourselves, we probably won't see him back for this series. And that was a devastating blow. And also, how well he was playing in game number 2 before he went out. You could have used that and say, wow, this Knicks team maybe can make a run to the NBA Finals. Now you're looking at the Knicks team as a shell of itself because OG Anunoby's not there on top of Julius Randle. And now, obviously, Mitchell Robinson. This is just a war of attrition right now for the Knicks. We'll see if they can rescue game number 5.
For the first time this series, the Pacers now a series outright favorite minus 132 to win this series and advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. So it's a best of three, and yes, New York has home floor advantage inside Madison Square Garden, but the odds makers don't really seem to stack it up in favor of the Knicks.